Hi folks, I want to talk a little bit about Eckhart Tolle, this spiritual teacher whom I'm sure most, if not all of you, have heard of. I've read a couple of his books in the past. I read The Power of Now and A New Earth. I can appreciate him to a limited extent, but I don't really resonate much with his views. Although it could be argued that he's sort of in the same non-duality ballpark that I'm in, but only maybe in a very limited way. Anyway, here's a statement made by Eckhart Tolle in A New Earth, and I want to read it and then we're going to talk about it. Fear, anxiety, expectation, regret, guilt, anger are the dysfunctions of the time-bound state of consciousness. I'll read it again. Fear, anxiety, expectation, regret, guilt, anger are the dysfunctions of the time-bound state of consciousness. I profoundly disagree with this statement. So let's go into this. First of all, are these emotions dysfunctions? Are they really? So let's try to use an example or two. When I think of a gazelle, for instance, being chased by a predator in the wild, like a lion, it's a fearful creature. It feels fear. The fear fills its veins with adrenaline, allowing it to sprint much quicker to get away from the predator. So everything's working perfectly. It's supposed to feel fear when it's chased by a predator. Fear doesn't seem to be a dysfunction. You see? Is the gazelle trapped in a time-bound state of consciousness? What does that mean exactly? Let's use a few more examples. Okay, you're at a zoo and a zookeeper accidentally leaves a lion's cage open. So you're there with the whole public, right? The lion gets out of the cage and starts prowling around on the loose. You hear screaming everywhere, people are running. But you're a spiritually enlightened person who's not trapped in a time-bound state of consciousness. So what do? Do you feel fear? You should, right? Because it's the fear that might allow you to scale a 7-foot wall on pure adrenaline so that you don't end up as the lion's lunch, right? Again, it's not a dysfunction. See, I want to give Eckhart Tolle a little bit of credit here because I know what he means when he says the time-bound state of consciousness, because we're all in the present moment. It's all we have. Life occurs in the present moment, nowhere else, right? The present moment is in continual motion. There's no past and no future other than events that occurred as the present when they occurred, right? It's always the present. So you can live your life by looking at the present around you, and that means you're fully present. You've got a life. But if you're constantly absorbed with thoughts about the future or possibly regrets about the past, then you're not in the present. You're in a time-bound state of consciousness. And that's an unfortunate human bad habit, shall we say. A much simpler organism that doesn't possess a memory is automatically in the present moment, simply reacting to immediate threats. It doesn't need a memory, but a creature like a human being needs a memory. And the ability to remember and the ability to imagine possible futures, that's not dysfunctional. That's a rich experience of consciousness, to be able to take your attention off your immediate environment into the past, to draw things out of the past so that you can use them in the present, such as remembering how to drive your car or projecting ahead to a possible future so that you can use that projection to either bring about a desired outcome or avoid an outcome that you don't want. I mean, another example would be, let's say you're driving a car with the intention of robbing a bank. So I know it's a weird example, right? But it's a legitimate example. Somebody somewhere in the world is about to rob a bank, right? 7.5 billion people. So let's say you're driving the car, but you think ahead and you're imagining yourself staring out from behind the bars of a jail cell. And you know that that's a possible outcome of what you're about to do. And it fills you with fear. That fear is not a dysfunction. It's not going to serve you to pull your mind out of the future back into the present so you can be fully present now to avoid worries and fears. No, that sort of fear is a motivator to change your present behavior, to stop the car and say to yourself, what the hell am I doing? I don't want to go to jail, right? There's nothing dysfunctional about any of this. So yes, it is this unfortunate bad human habit because we have this ability to spend so much of our time thinking about the future, so much of our time thinking about the past, ignoring what's right here in front of us. And suddenly you might be doing this for years and you go, oh my goodness, where has my life gone? I haven't been living it. So that's not a spiritual problem. That's just a bad habit. So break the habit. You're always in the now. If you spend loads of time thinking about the future or the past, that is simply the activity you are choosing to do in the present, in the now. You can't be anywhere else. I think sometimes spiritual teachers try to present this idea of becoming present as something you have to do. You can't be anywhere but the present. Here, look around you. You're in the present, listening to me. I'm actually in the past talking to you, but for me it's the present, right? Because this is a recording. Let's not complicate it. We don't need to complicate it like that. It's the present. Look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's the present. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's the present. The thing we call time is ticking away, but it's kind of a mental abstraction. The thing that is fundamentally real is the present moment, and it's always moving. And it's the movement of the present that gives us the concept of time, which is a purely mental concept. You can't be anywhere but the present. You don't need a special exercise to connect with the present. You just have to see that it's always the present, right? There isn't a problem relating to time or being time bound other than a bad habit, right? Fear, anxiety, expectation, regret, guilt, anger are the dysfunctions of the time-bound state of consciousness. No, they're not. They're absolutely necessary to a successful life, right? You see, notice that we can divide our emotions into what we might say positive and negative ones, but they're not really positive and negative. If you look at these emotions, fear, anxiety, expectation can go both ways, regret, guilt, anger, they're all uncomfortable emotions, not negative emotions. And uncomfortable emotions are motivators for you to change your present behavior. That's what they are. All right? I hope you can see that. Now, expectation is a funny one because it can be a very positive, a very pleasurable emotion. Remember what it was like to be a kid on Christmas Eve. You're trapped in the time-bound state of consciousness because you're thinking about the next day. You're thinking about waking up in the morning and opening all those cool presents that Santa Claus has brought you, right? So think about, the expectation is part of the pleasure of that time of year. And it's time bound. So Eckhart Tolle seems to be trying to create problems here where none actually exist. And in a way, his success is contingent upon this. Like, because fear, anxiety, expectation, regret, guilt, anger, because these emotions are uncomfortable, we'd all love to be able to get rid of them completely, wouldn't we? To live a life where there is no fear, no anxiety, no expectation, at least no negative expectation, no regrets, no guilts, no anger. Who wouldn't want to have a kind of consciousness that didn't have to deal with those uncomfortable things? So that's part of the sales pitch. That's part of why people like Eckhart Tolle are so successful, because they are presenting to you a kind of consciousness, and the sales pitch is you can live in a special state of consciousness where you won't have to feel these things. And that is a lie. It's a lie, and it's a terrible delusion. And it's the reason why he's successful. It's part of the reason why he's successful. Everybody wants life to be more comfortable than it is. But the only thing I'm interested in is reality. So I will never have his kind of success, right? Nor am I worried about whether I get it, because that's not what this is about for me, right? The small success, if you can call it that I've had, and I'm basically speaking about the fact that there's now 10,000 subscribers on YouTube, where there once was 100, 8 or 9 years ago. And that has simply organically happened over the years as I have simply continued to talk from the heart about what I feel strongly about without trying to achieve something. None of this is motivated by ambition for me, right? But here it is. I'm a small player. Oh, I hate even using that term because I'm not a player, but you know what I mean. I'm not in the spirituality business like Eckhart Tolle is. So, I'm right here just talking to whoever wants to listen, however many people or however few. And that's what it is for me, and I do it because I enjoy it. So, Eckhart Tolle, taken with a pinch of salt. If you're interested in real spirituality, get interested in critical thinking in a big way. There's nothing wrong with you. There's no problem that needs to be fixed. No metaphysical problem with consciousness. There's no waking up. There's no liberation. This is it. And it's pretty good, actually. Take care.